Welcome to Ladies Talking Love, episode 85, Talking to Kids About Pornography. It's Ladies Talking Love, a community of women uncovering more joy and fulfillment in sex as we learn from experts and amazing women like you. Together, let's create a world where women's sexuality is celebrated and understood, beginning with our own. I'm your host, Ariel Finlinson. Let's talk love. I honestly used to be terrified about pornography. Now, that doesn't mean that I condone pornography or think that it's fine to look at, but just the word pornography filled me with fear. If I heard that someone struggled with pornography, I automatically assumed that they must be addicted and that the rest of their life would be a struggle of not being able to create a fantastic sexual relationship with their spouse or future spouse because of this struggle with pornography. Now, I do recognize that pornography can have a lot of negative effects on a relationship. But when we can take the fear out of it and work together either as a couple or as we're helping friends or talking with our kids about pornography, there is power that can come when we show up with love and we help get to the root of what is actually causing them to look at pornography. And like we've talked about in the past with Dr. Cameron Staley and Zach and Darcy Spafford, a lot of the reasons that people end up looking at pornography is because they don't know how to cope with their big emotions. But in this episode, we are going to talk about kids. And according to research, the biggest reasons why kids seek out pornography may be surprising to you, but also you as a parent have a lot of power to keep them from seeking out pornography. This episode is going to empower you and help you know how you can protect your kids against pornography and help them learn more about healthy sexual relationships. Meg Jankovich received a bachelor's degree in 2004 from the University of Utah in early childhood development. After getting married, teaching first grade, and becoming a stay-at-home mom to their 4 children who are now ages 8 to 17, Meg decided to go back to school and completed her master's degree from Brigham Young University in August 2023, where she researched parent-child sex communication in the Marriage, Family, and Human Development program. She has seen firsthand that most people around her, herself included, could not talk about sexuality in a healthy or useful way. While in her cap and gown on graduation day, Meg realized there was still more research to do and much more that she wanted to learn. So she is now working towards her PhD in the same Marriage, Family, and Human Development program at BYU. When Meg is not researching sexuality, she loves to cook, read, play the piano, sing, spend time chatting with friends and family, and go on dates with her husband. Before jumping in, I have a couple things that I want to talk with you about. The first is that this week, tomorrow, I am having a live couples workshop. In this workshop, you are going to learn 5 keys to creating a fulfilling sexual relationship. This is a fantastic starting place. Whether you already have a great sexual relationship or you're struggling to know how to create a great sexual relationship. A lot of us don't even know where to start because we don't know what's possible. No one has ever given us the vocabulary of what to talk about with our spouse and the potential that we have to create a deep and fulfilling sexual relationship in our marriage. So if you are ready to transform your marriage through your sexual relationship, go to ladiestalkinglove.com/couples workshop and join so you can grab your spot and attend my workshop. If you're able to attend live, you will also get access to my Female Orgasm 101 mini course for free. I'm here to help you take your sexual relationship with your spouse to the next level, and I'm so excited to have you join my couples workshop. On another note, we are going to be pivoting a little bit here. This is the last podcast episode for the foreseeable future. This is sad. And we've done a lot of work on here, and there are a lot of fantastic episodes with so many great guests. But I will hop back on to let you know in several weeks or a month or two what our next steps will be and where you can keep listening to great information to help improve your marriage and sex life. I'm so grateful for you being here and coming along with me on this journey as we've learned together over the past years about how to create a more deeply fulfilling sex life with our spouse. And I hope that you will continue with me on this journey as the work I'm doing pivots a little bit and we're using some different platforms. But make sure to stay tuned and I will hop back on to let you know where you can find me for my next step. But without further ado, let's talk love. I'm so excited to welcome Meg Jankovich onto Ladies Talking Love. Thanks for joining me, Meg.
Thank you for having me.
This is so exciting. I've known Meg for a while, and it's taken us a while to have her on, but it's going to be worth it because she's going to share some amazing things. Today, we're diving into talking about porn with our kids and helping them recognize pornography and giving them the tools so that they can create healthy relationships and recognize that porn isn't helpful and how to kind of get away from porn in their life. And so I'm really excited to dive in. Can you start off by just defining pornography for us?
So research has been divided in the past. When they say pornography, they don't always define it. And so recent research has tried to be more specific about what pornography actually means. So one really traditional research-based definition is, and this is a quote from a research article, pornography is any sexually explicit media that are primarily intended to sexually arouse the audience. So that's like, those are big words. I wouldn't use those types of words to describe it to children. But for adults, the key thing to remember is that it's media, so usually videos or pictures, and its intent is to sexually arouse. So it's not just like nude art. You could separate that because nude art is probably not intended for sexual arousal, although some people may experience sexual arousal when they see it, but it wasn't its purpose. So for my children, I really simplify that down. And we say, like, if you see naked people having sex, that's what we would call pornography. And then as they get older, we talk about how that's made for sexual arousal.
I love the separation of nudity versus pornography as well, because I think that especially in some cultures, the one I live in, nudity in general is just like, we shouldn't see this. And I think that's such an important separation because I think not understanding nudity and recognizing that bodies are bodies can give pornography even more power in our kids' lives and in our own lives of bodies being scary and unknown instead of being able to say like, oh, this is a body, this is nudity, bodies are good, bodies are great. And then to recognize like, this is created to stimulate arousal in me versus just a body.
Absolutely. And from the way lots of us were raised, I was raised in a conservative religion and I'm still part of that conservative religion. And I don't know if I was specifically and explicitly taught this, but I believed that any kind of naked body was basically pornography. And if you see a magazine, even in the grocery store line, that has a scantily clad woman on it, well, that's pornography. And while that could be, I think that at least the way I started mothering around all of these issues back when I was very afraid of these topics, it was all fear-based. And I was like, Don't look at that because that's pornography, rather than taking a deep breath and getting more informed by what research actually says. And I'm having a better way to talk about like what this actually is and trying to remove fear from the discussion.
Yeah. And I even remember as a kid, we took a family trip to Europe and I got to see the David by Michelangelo in person, right? It's like this beautiful sculpture of a male body. And I remember walking around the David and kind of looking up in awe, but also kind of avoiding like the genital section and just this fear instead of me being able to recognize like, wow, a male body is amazing and there's so many great parts. It was like, oh, but I'm kind of avoiding this part. And I think when we come at bodies and nakedness out of fear, it can, like I said, like, I don't know if this is a good way to describe it, so you correct me, but like, it can give pornography more power because of that curiosity, instead of being able for me to just recognize like, oh, this is art. This isn't made to arouse. This is showing a male human body versus something else that might be like an act of sex, you know?
Yes, especially with young kids. I feel like the discussion we're going to have today about pornography and children viewing it or not viewing it really is grounded in healthy sexual discussions with your children. And part of that, what the research talks about with young children, is parents feel like they're too young at any age to talk to their kids about sex, whether they're, 3 or 13.
Yeah.
They also talk about how as adults, we tend to sexualize what young children are experiencing, where they're just seeing body parts. They're just seeing like a penis in a piece of art. And we are seeing, oh my goodness, this is a sexual organ. And if my child sees this, like, and our brains and our fears can get out of hand with, what is my child going to think if they see a penis that's more lifelike, because we haven't shown them that. And our adult minds go to a sexualized place. And a kid would, if you've told your child they shouldn't look at a penis and that that's bad, then they probably would have a reaction more like the adults that I was discussing. But if you've just been matter of fact about it, then the child will probably just say, that's a penis, and you might feel embarrassed or something if they say that out loud in front of others, but the child moves on after that and probably would be like, this is so like the whole statue is so humongous, and focus on other things. So yeah, taking some power out of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And especially like what you said, like, I think the unknown then can almost bring in more sexual arousal with just nudity that isn't meant to necessarily arouse because of that unknown aspect. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And I think the reason it does that is because it's like anything that we won't talk about.
Yeah.
And we're like, you can't know about that. I can't tell you about that. Or there's something about that we can't discuss. That's going to increase curiosity, because kids will be like, well, why? Right? I would have as a child, and I did, when people would say like, well, we can't really talk about this. I would try not to, because I understood, well, something about that is bad, but my natural curiosity wondered why. And I would think a lot more about it rather than just having the information in the first place. And then kids' curiosity is satiated and they know what they know at that point. So yes, our own fear and our lack of wanting to discuss things adds more curiosity, and therefore adds more power that doesn't ever need to be part of the discussion to whatever the topic is around sexuality, whether that's pornography or nudity or sexual health facts.
Yeah. And like you said, it's so matter of fact for kids. I remember we're pretty open in our family. I remember one time my husband was using the bathroom and a child came in and was like, hey dad, I like your penis. He's like, oh, thanks. It's just like, so like, oh yeah, okay. Like, and then move on,
Yes.
What's this toy? It's just so interesting. I think this is probably a little bit obvious of a question, but I wanted to ask it just to dive into this a little more. What is harmful? What is worrisome about children viewing pornography?
If you had asked me this 15 years ago, I would have had a very different answer, but my answer would have been not at all research-based, right? So I wanted to speak this out loud in case this resonates with some of your listeners. So, what is so worrisome, or what's the big trouble about if a child views pornography? I would have told you 15 years ago, it's because they might become addicted, and then all bad things happen, and they'll probably end up in prison as like a pedophile, and that's where my brain went instantly. And it was so scary, and just like the worst possible thing I could think of for my child to ever view porn. But what I just spoke is myth. That's not the normal trajectory. It's not reality-based. It's definitely not what the research teaches. So if we are just asking what's actually problematic about children viewing pornography, I found a recent study today back from 2021 by Massey and other scholars that talked about how pornography use is associated with increased sexual risk in teenagers. So they will probably have riskier sex. There's a lack of concern for consent because they're viewing images that don't usually show or model consent. so they may not think it's very important. It can be possibly linked, although this hasn't been shown to be causal. This is just an association, that it's linked to practices that are more violent in sex, like slapping and hair pulling. And it may impact youth having less emotional care during sex. So like those are concrete things that have been shown in research to be associated with young people who watch porn and then go have sex. And it's related to like riskier and just less consensual and less probably emotionally sensitive experiences for them.
It's more about like a lustful person object to fulfill my desire versus a relational aspect of sex.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And the other thing I thought was really interesting, talking about boys versus girls and how they interpret these images that they're seeing from pornography. The research said that it has a profound impact, particularly on girls and young women, by creating a culture of sexualization and body dissatisfaction. So from a girl's perspective, they're seeing bodies that look perfect, and doing these sexual things that they may then think, I guess I need to look like that, and I need to do these things to be a good woman or to be good at sex, those types of messages. And then boys and young men are also negatively affected, and they say the messages given to boys are just as limiting and restrictive. And this is straight from this research. They say the messages they learn are to be macho, to be strong, to be dominant, and to be emotionless. And I don't know about you, but for my son, I have one teenage son, macho, strong, dominant, and emotionless are not the words I would use to describe for the hopes I have for his future sexual relationship. Those types of messages they're not helping your children at all. And those are the actual risks of pornography. There's not tons of evidence when youth view porn, they go out and cause lots of, sexual violence toward others, but there is some. But the big fears that I had are not research-based. But when we bring in, usually from conservative religion, where we believe that sex addiction can occur, and we talk in terms of that, and we tell our kids, oh no, you viewed pornography, you're going to be addicted to sex. Those words alone, because words are so powerful, that message is usually what creates the problem of I can't stop viewing pornography. It's not the actual pornography itself. It's the messaging and the fear around pornography use.
The helplessness that once you viewed, you're stuck forever.
Yeah.
No, it is so powerful. And I'll make sure and link an episode I have with Cameron Staley. He dove into that. Yes, we love Cameron.
He's the best at describing this.
Yes, about the coping mechanism, and that when we put addiction to this term, it makes that person feel helpless, because it's like, well, now I can't help it. And I would love you to talk, because you said like a lot of what we need to do to help our kids is to talk about healthy sexuality and to talk about sex in a healthy way. So what are some things that you have found we need to be talking to our kids about to help them understand what healthy relationships look like, so that if they come, not if, right? Like when they come across porn, they'll be able to be like, wow, this is not real. This is fake. This is objectifying women. This is making men seem like monsters, like to recognize that.
There's a couple things I would say here. First of all, the research shows that when young people are looking at pornography, if they're intentionally seeking it out, there's obviously the inadvertent, like, oh, oops, I came across pornography, which probably will happen to most children.
Yeah.
But then for the ones who continue to seek it out, the research says it's because of curiosity and education. So this is the power of parents. The same research also showed, though, they said the ability to talk to parents or other family members is key in counteracting some of the negative messages found in pornography.
Wow, Meg, can we just stop for a second? That is huge. Kids are seeking out pornography because of curiosity and education. Do we want our kids to be curious about bodies and have to go to porn to learn about them and to learn about sex from porn? Wow, that is so powerful.
I know. I'm like, that sentence alone is so powerful. And then the fact that they've shown over and over that when families get involved and parents get involved, it can change the course of the child's experience with it. So if we think about curiosity and education, so kids are curious and they're going to be no matter what, like that. We don't want to stifle curiosity. That is normal and developmentally appropriate. Of course, kids ask a million questions a day. Kids will ask questions about their bodies. And as their bodies start changing and they can see, oh, my body is different from my mom's body, they'll ask these questions. I'm sure we've all experienced that. And then the second one, that they're viewing pornography because of education, that is completely within our power, 100% as parents, to give them the education. So the way that I would approach it is saying something like, when you're going to have these discussions, and we can talk more specifically about different ages and what to say, but in general, one of the types of messages I send to my own children are, on the internet, you might come across videos or pictures of naked people and naked people having sex. That's not the type of thing that's really good for us to watch, because especially, so that's called pornography. You can throw that in there, and maybe at different ages that's more appropriate. And what they're showing you is kind of a fantasy. It's not real. It's behind a video and they're making a movie about it. So it's very fake and fantasy. And these aren't real relationships usually. And it's not really teaching you anything. So I'm happy to teach you anything you need to know about sex if you're interested in it, because I can give you true information and accurate information. And I can make sure that you don't learn things that are false or wrong. And then your job as a parent, of course, would then to be that accurate source of information and not to freak out when they come and ask you a question.
I think that's such a powerful thing, though, to be the source of education for our kids. And I want that for my kids. I think most of us do, but a lot of us are like, we don't know enough about sex to do that. And that's one reason I'm here. So please, we are here to help you get the education you need so you can answer those questions for your kids. But also, I think it's really powerful as a parent to be able to say, this isn't something I know because I haven't been comfortable with this or learned. So let me figure it out and learn with your kids. That is going to be such a powerful thing for them to see that they're important and their questions are important and that you're not afraid to dive into these issues to help them learn as they're curious.
Yes. And they will see you finding information or learning things, and you're not turning to pornography to learn them, which will be, and you might not even have to ever say that directly, but they'll be seeing you model, here's how we find good information.
Where do we, yes, exactly.
Yeah, we don't turn to pornography because we're not going to get accurate information. We're going to get sexual fantasy from pornography.
And we're finding good sources. We're not going to whatever, just like Fad magazine. We're going to look at research and we're going to find people who know what they're talking about. How would you have these conversations then with kids? I'd love to kind of split it up by age, because I think that can be really helpful. Sometimes we're like, well, these are things you talk to kids about, but it's like, okay, but what do I do when they're 0 to 5? And what do I do when they're, 6 to 9? So could you just kind of go through different age groups and give some examples of what you would do at that age to introduce the concept of pornography and to help your kids navigate things they may come across and teaching healthy sexuality at those ages?
Yes. So, and I will say all of these discussions at different ages are in the context that you are also having much more frequent conversations about body parts and sharing, like to model consent and what body parts do, and puberty discussions and all of these things too. So within that context of a bigger discussion on healthy sexuality development, for pornography discussion specifically, I would say of like infant to 5 years old, with obviously 5-year-olds being much more engaged in these conversations than an infant would be. By the time your child is old enough to be using an internet-based device, that's probably the time to start having these discussions. And I would say very simply, so if you ever see naked people, go ahead on this device, on your iPad, on the TV, on the computer, come and tell me about it. Sometimes people put pictures or videos on the internet or on that device, and we don't really want to watch that. And kids will just probably say, okay, mommy. They won't really question it. And that's it. As simple as that. I don't think there's a need to label this as pornography. Pornography is bad, because that will introduce a fear to them that isn't necessary at that age. From 6 to 9, this is all additive. So I would keep saying those same phrases you said when they were younger. And then talking about how, if you ever see naked people, come tell me, because we don't really watch that. Plus, I would add something like, also, if you see those pictures, you'll probably feel really curious about them. And that is totally normal. So if you feel curious, just know that that's not really a surprise, because we're just really curious people. But remember, things on the internet about naked bodies are usually fake and they're not real. And we want you to learn real things. So I'll tell you whatever you need to know. So if you have questions, when you get curious, just come and ask me. In the conversation about pornography. And again, separately though, you're also teaching these children, and you'll start this a little bit younger, probably at age 4 and 5 when kids are having tantrums and things, but you're also all along the way teaching emotional awareness and teaching them to be aware of like, what are you feeling right now? Because research shows that usually people who experience what is called problematic pornography use, since some people view porn as adults and don't find it problematic. So then they look at the ones who are having problems with it. And it's usually that they are using it as a coping mechanism to deal with unwanted emotion. So if we can also teach our children all along growing up about their own emotions and to be aware of them, and then some healthy coping mechanisms like, let's take some deep breaths. Do you need a hug? Like, let's go on a walk and talk about what you're feeling. Like those types of things are healthier ways to manage. So that's all along the way. So you're having specific conversations about like, if you see naked people on the internet, let me know. But then you're also teaching them very separately about to be aware of their emotions and how to manage them and handle them. So then from ages 10 to 13, so kind of this prepubescent age going into the teenage years and puberty, again, you're saying all the same things you've said before, but at this point, if you haven't already used the word pornography, which you definitely could earlier, I would add it in here for sure by about age 10 to just say, if you see naked people on the internet, that's called pornography. So that when they hear the word pornography, they won't wonder like, well, what is that? Because there's the curiosity again. If you've established a relationship with your kids where if they're wondering something, they can come to you, that's perfect. But if you haven't, and they're like, oh, what's pornography? And they go Google the word pornography. There you go. Then they find it, right? So I would definitely add that word in at that point. And again, you're talking about emotional awareness, healthy coping mechanisms. And then, especially at this age, puberty is up and coming. I would definitely teach about what sexual arousal is at this point. When you talk to adults who experience problematic pornography use, many of them say, I found porn and then I looked at it because I was curious. And then I kept looking at it because basically I was sexually aroused and that felt good. And usually if they were taught not to, then they're also having shame around the sexual arousal that is just this bad spiral. So at this age, if you're teaching your kids, so as you get older and you experience puberty and your body's changing in preparation to create babies one day and to have sex as an adult, if that's your value, I would throw that in there too. You can say you'll also experience sexual feelings and sexual arousal, which is totally normal. And when you experience something, a feeling, just like we've been talking about emotions all along, it's another feeling to manage, and you can deep breathe and notice it and then go about your day. So you're preparing them with tools to manage their sexual arousal without adding fear around it or without shaming them about something that is going to happen. Like they probably will experience sexual arousal. And it's nice to do it before they've maybe experienced that and to help them feel prepared when they do. And then moving into the more teenage years, like ages 14 plus, again, you're saying all the same things. At this point, you should hopefully be having very regular conversations about healthy sexual development, healthy relationships, and those would come all along too. All of this is like, you're sort of saying the same things, but on an age appropriate level, keeping it simple and adding complexity, right? As your kids get older. And they'll ask questions if you've had this open dialogue going on. But even if they don't, you can bring it up and you could say something like, hey, so now that you're older, like, have you seen any pornography? If they've never brought it up to you. And you might have a child who's going to disclose that to you more easily. And a lot of parents have children who won't disclose it. They might feel nervous or embarrassed or they're hiding something, right? I would just keep normalizing it as a parent. Just say, it would be very likely that you've seen pornography. And if you haven't, that's fine. And if you have, just remember that you've probably then felt some sexual arousal about it. And it's normal, just like you're trying to normalize all these experiences. And then I would just remind them that what you see in porn is fake. So let's again talk about what is real and what a healthy sexual relationship would look like. And as I'm saying all this, like, this is idyllic, probably. I haven't had that exact conversation with my 17-year-old, though, just to normalize things. I don't sit him down and I'm like, let's talk about pornography today, to him. So these are in little tiny bits here and there over time. And if you're not feeling like you have to have one big sexual talk, like a lot of us experience, like the talk, that's not a good model for talking about sex. We want to do it in little bits, tons and tons over time. And the same thing would be for pornography. We're going to mention it here and there, check in, and then keep teaching them, though, like, the focus shouldn't be on pornography. The focus should be on, let's talk about all the sexual development you're experiencing and how to manage your emotions around sex, and teach them more mindfulness activities. That's the one thing that has been shown in research to actually lessen unwanted porn use is to notice your arousal, basically just breathe into it. And remember that arousal and behavior are different. Just because you have a feeling doesn't mean you have to do anything. So you're talking more openly, you're using the word pornography, but that's not your main focus. Your main focus is on all of the other.
On the healthy sexuality.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I will make sure and link Dr. Padilla Walker, who Meg actually is working with on her PhD. She did a series of healthy communication at different ages.
Perfect.
Of what to talk about with kids. So I'll link that. And then Dr. Shalom Levitt, who does mindfulness, she did an episode on talking with our teens about arousal and helping them learn. So I'll make sure and link those, because everything Meg is saying is so important. And I think the main thing is, like, these should be consistent conversations. Kristen Hodson, she's a sex educator, and she talks about like 1,000 1-minute conversations throughout the lifespan, right? Like, these should be consistent little things that are coming up that we can talk about. And like, you could even share like, oh, I was online looking up something today and I saw a picture, and this is what I did to handle this picture that was pornography, and I think these little conversations, just making a safe place for our kids, and also, like Meg said, helping them recognize that it's fake by having conversations about what healthy sexuality is like and what it can be like. Then we covered this a little bit, but just kind of to sum it up, how can we safeguard our kids against pornography use?
Yeah, since pornography use is typically internet-based, I would say that having good parenting around the internet is really important. If you're the type of parent who is giving unlimited access and unlimited time on the internet to your children, I would maybe say, let's provide our kids with boundaries and have discussions and have limits on the type of screen time they're having, the amount of screen time they're having, etc. And then my kids know that I always say this. If they're on the internet, I don't say this every time, but I say it regularly, probably every couple of weeks. I'll say, okay, and remember, what do you do if you see naked people on the internet? And this is from my kids ages ranging from 8 to 17. And they're like, we know, mommy, we close the computer and come tell you. They're like annoyed by it. And I keep bringing it up anyway. So it's like, we already have boundaries, but our kids will have screen time. And when they do, have them have a tool, something to do if they run into it. And then really the biggest safeguard, like if we want to, I said this in another interview I did, but I think it's so true. If we want to safeguard our children against pornography, we need to have healthy sexuality conversations. And I know I'm a little bit annoying because I say that a lot, but it's the most powerful thing parents can do for their children. If they have all the education they need because of you, and you've taught them about the things they're curious about, there's a lot less to find out on the internet.
Yeah. Yes. And I was thinking too that some people who might be listening might be like me, like pornography, just the word instilled so much fear in me for so long. And I feel like I'm just starting to get to a place where I'm like, oh, this doesn't need to be scary and I can talk about it. And so if you're noticing those feelings of fear and like, sharp intake of breath, I just would challenge you to start learning more about pornography, like look up Cam Staley, listen to some of those episodes I have linked and about healthy sexuality talks, because we can't create a safe place to talk with our kids about healthy sexuality and about pornography if we feel so fearful. They're going to sense that. And so it's been a good journey for me to recognize, like you said, 15 years ago for you, and I don't know, like 8 years ago for me, 5 years ago for me, it's like this just intense fear. And now it can still feel a little scary, but I'm getting better at like, oh, have you seen any naked people online? Just
Yeah.
like bring it up more naturally without like, what if they say yes? And so I just wanted to bring that up, that if you're feeling that, that is completely normal. And I'm so proud of you being here listening, because this is a great step in making pornography not such a scary thing so that we can be a safe place to talk with our kids.
Yes, amen. And I said 15 years ago because for sure I was in it 15 years ago in the major fear, but even like 7 years ago, right before I went to grad school, this is one of the main reasons why I went, because I was so afraid of pornography. And then I think I saw somebody say, maybe it's the way we're talking about pornography that's actually the problem. And it was like this major light bulb moment in my life. And I thought, is this true? I want to go research about it and find out. And I want to see if what I have been taught growing up is accurate, or if there's maybe another way to think about this. And it was just like the happiest discovery that pornography, like you don't have to like pornography. I am not pro porn, but if you want to shame pornography and be super afraid of it, that's actually going to create the problems you're trying to avoid, which is we don't want our kids to turn to porn. So being able to take a deep breath and realize most people and most kids aren't addicted to porn. There's even been in the LDS church, they used to talk more in terms of pornography addiction. And in 2015, Elder Dallin H. Oaks, President now Dallin H. Oaks, gave in the Ensign in 2015, published an article about how there's actually different levels of pornography use. And he said in there, most young men and young women are not addicted, even if they're viewing it. And just taking away that fear and focusing more on a growth mindset that even if your child has viewed porn and even if they seek it out, if they believe that they are in control of their choices and they're learning emotional regulation skills, then they can feel agency in their lives to make a choice that's in line with who they want to be. But if we're telling them, oh my gosh, you're addicted, we need to send you to the addiction recovery program, the message there is, oh my goodness, I have something in my life that's permanent. I'll never get rid of this. And that feels really scary. But those things aren't research-based. It's very fear-based.
Yeah. And I think it's so hopeful of what we can create. And it's just like talking about healthy sexuality conversations. I know for me, for so long, it was so fearful. And if I were to tell my like 17-year-old self that I talk about sex like all day for my job, I would have buried myself alive. But like the beauty is that as we practice, this can become comfortable. And just like Meg was saying, like the more we talk about healthy sexuality and sex, the more we can help safeguard our kids and ourselves as well to like not be so afraid of our sexuality. And it's like so opposite of what we think. The more we talk about sex, the more sex our kids are going to have. And the research shows it's completely opposite. Like the more we talk about it, the more comfortable we are, the safer we can help our kids be in their choices they make, aligning with what they want in their future life. So what would you say then for kids who are seeking out pornography? How would you help children work through that?
First of all, I would tell them it's totally normal that you're interested in this because our bodies are sexual. We're sexual beings. I would ask them questions and get curious myself and be like, so tell me about this. When you look at this, what are you experiencing and why do you think you're experiencing that? Trying to understand the root of the behavior rather than just focusing on the behavior. Based on the research, chances are they're probably feeling anxiety and some depression and some big emotions that they don't know how to handle. And they probably have some type of lack of education and haven't understood some things that they want to learn about. So that all said, get curious. I wouldn't use any fear shaming tactics. I would probably focus on teaching more emotional awareness, checking in with our emotions, since that's so correlated in the research on why people seek it out in the first place. And then also sometimes it's really helpful to try to help your teenager focus forward on what they want in life. And I talk to my kids really matter-of-factly about agency and choice and consequence. Like, you can do whatever you want in life. Like, I'm trying to teach you good principles and good values that have blessed my own life. But in the end, you get to decide what you do. And that's just fine. And there's always consequences. There's always a reaction to everything you do. So if I had a teenager looking at porn, I would, first of all, remind them how much I love them, try to improve my own parent-child relationship and all of that. But I would also say, let's like think forward to like what you want in life. And if this isn't what you want, to be an adult who views pornography, then let's figure out what we can do now to help you so that they feel their own motivation towards quitting, and reminding them that it's very possible for them to stop looking at it if that's what they want to do.
No, I love that. Giving them hope and helping them feel like this is what you want to be. I'm here to help you, and we can figure out how to help you navigate this.
Right.
Would you add anything for creating a safe space where your kids can talk to us when they see pornography? I loved when you said, like, hey, if you see naked people, what do you do? Like, having that ongoing conversation so our kids know what to do. What else would you maybe add just to create that safe space?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of this idea of, if you see any naked people on the internet or on, whatever device, just turn it off and come talk to me. If they're willing to do that, then the discussion might sound something like, and this could be really at any age, like, what was it like for you seeing that? Like, what did you think? What did you feel? If you were curious, it was normal. Like, were you curious about it? What were you curious about? Just as parents, our own curiosity can just open up so much discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but like when I have somebody who's truly interested in me and is coming from a loving space, I feel very safe to just share. And a lot of times it's in the sharing and the connecting with others that whatever our needs are being met more. So our kids will be the same.
Yeah.
And that's not to say if your child is seeking out porn and you do all these things, then it'll solve it and they will stop. Another thing to consider is, as children are learning anything, whether that's children or teenagers, my son's learning how to drive right now, and it's kind of clunky. It's not perfect. Just because I've told him something, like, we realized actually as he was turning a corner really fast this week, I was like, apparently we haven't talked about slowing down before you turn the car around the corner, and I was like, there's so many discussions that can come up, but I don't expect him to be perfect at it, even though if I'm honest, I kind of wish he were perfect and make my life easier. But that's not realistic at all for basically anything with our kids, right? So if your child's seeking out porn and you're having safe discussions and you're teaching emotional awareness and you're not using shame, but you're being warm about your discussions and reminding them that you love them, and yet they still seek it out, just like stay with them. And remember, it's a long game, this parenting gig. It is long. We teach and we reteach and we love and we correct kindly and we provide boundaries as necessary. Like, it's still appropriate to say, and at night, let's have you plug your phone in right here. We plug it in this public space. You don't take it into your bedroom. That's fine to have a boundary too. It's not like we're saying, do whatever you want and hopefully you won't choose porn. Like, we're providing boundaries or providing warmth. But then when they inevitably screw up, then we're still there to love them and coach them along. Thinking of it developmentally, where kids don't learn really anything right away. It takes time. So if that's a struggle for your child, but you're sticking with them with really good parenting along the way and love, they're probably going to be just fine. You just have to like walk with them in the process.
And I feel like this analogy is maybe overused, but with a child learning to walk, like, we expect them to fall. But I feel like sometimes in the way we teach sexuality or don't teach sexuality, we expect our kids to be perfect from the get-go. But just like learning a new instrument or learning to walk, they're going to be making mistakes along the way. And we can be there to guide them. And I think it can be harmful to expect perfection in this area when like they have to learn just like us. And I think having them learn it while they're home is really empowering to them, that they hopefully we can be a good guide for them and be there for them. And they don't then have to leave the house and be like, wow, I have no idea how to manage my sexual arousal. I have no idea what to do when I feel aroused and I see this picture and I'm so curious and I don't know who to ask. And so
Right.
we can be that place for them to help them as they mess up and as they're learning. And then when they go out, hopefully they'll be better equipped.
Absolutely. It's like one piece of a really big picture, and we're talking about it all the time. And I will throw in here, I didn't understand this as well when I first started my graduate school experience 4 years ago. Well, 5 now, I guess, but it's been something that's really been driven home in all the research I've read, and then in all the research I'm participating in writing. We as parents won't do everything perfect either, right? Just like our kids won't, we won't either. We'll probably screw up some of the conversations or be too controlling rather than more open and warm. But research shows probably more than anything is the warmth you have with your child or the quality of your parent-child relationship. That's probably the most protective thing regarding even sexual outcomes. Like kids often seek out sex when they're not having happy relationships at home. Not always, like, and research deals with averages. So, that's not always the story. But if you can focus on having a close parent-child relationship and establishing that, that's probably going to be one of the most protective things you can also do. When you add in the conversations and the developmental conversations you're having about everything your child's experiencing, that's even better. But just even focusing on that parent-child relationship is so powerful.
That's so good. Thank you, Meg. As we close up, can you just share a couple thoughts to bring it together? What do you wish parents knew about talking with their kids about pornography use?
What I wish parents knew is that it doesn't have to be scary, and that pornography use and discussions about pornography is one component of a much larger discussion about all sorts of topics regarding sex. And we don't have to focus on it so much, and we don't have to be afraid of it so much. And if we can teach our children how to feel their emotions and not be afraid of them, all along the way, having these open conversations, we're just setting our kids up for a lot of success.
Oh, thank you. This has been so great. Where can people find you, Meg?
So I have an Instagram account called Shame Free Chastity, and I post research on that account of how parents can best talk to their kids about sex, how they can address pornography, and all sorts of issues surrounding sexuality in general.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been great to have you on, Meg.
Thank you for having me, Ariel.
Even if you felt nervous listening to this podcast episode about pornography, I'm proud of you. I am proud of you for being here and for getting educated, especially around such important topics of what we can do to help teach our kids healthy sexuality and protect them from things like pornography. I thought that what Meg shared about the reasons kids seek out pornography was so empowering to me as a parent. They seek it out because they're curious about bodies and because they want to know more about sex. What a horrible place for kids to learn about human anatomy and to learn about sex, because what is shown in pornography is not true and often hurtful to relationships because it's unrealistic and it doesn't show consent or healthy relationships. But with that being said, you as a parent have so much power to influence the education that your child can get around body anatomy, male and female, and around healthy sexuality and what creating a healthy sex life takes with your spouse. And of course, we do not share intimate details about our own sex life with our kids, but we can talk at length and in these micro mini conversations throughout their lifetime about what it takes to create a healthy sexual relationship. Consent, love, compassion, making sure we're both enjoying ourselves, showing up humbly and listening to each other's experiences, making sure to learn about sexual pleasure for both people, redefining sex in a way that includes female pleasure. There are so many aspects of healthy sexuality that we can share with our kids. And consent is so important, and it doesn't end after marriage. I hope that after listening to Meg, you feel empowered to be able to talk with your kids, not only about avoiding pornography and why pornography can be hurtful for them, but also about how to talk about healthy relationships and empower our kids to see the beauty that they can create in their future by understanding what it takes to create a healthy sexual relationship. As we're wrapping up this last episode for the foreseeable future, I want to make sure that you are signing up for my couples workshop. I just got to do it with some women the other day, and the feedback I got was so inspiring. Within 24 hours, one of the girls reached out and said that the conversation she and her husband were having were completely different. What used to be awkward was now connecting and filled with love. And the guide that I give you as a free part of the workshop will influence their conversations now and in the future. And if you attend live, you get to grab my Female Orgasm 101 mini course for free. That's amazing. So head over to ladiestalkinglove.com/couples workshop and make sure to save your seat. Thank you again so much for being with me on this journey of podcasting over the last several years. And don't worry, we're not going away. We are just switching how we're going to do this and end the podcast and switch to a different platform. So I will be back on to give you the details about that in the next several weeks, couple months. So look for that, because I want to make sure you come and join me, because you've been such a fantastic and amazing part of my journey in getting my degree and diving into what it takes for couples to create a joyful and fulfilling sex life. I'm not going away. So make sure to go to Instagram at ladies.talkinglove to follow along with me there. Make sure you've joined my email list. You can go to ladiestalkinglove.com to do that, and look for that episode coming soon so that you can pivot with me and keep with me on this journey. As always, thanks for talking love.